Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jacob Davidson, and I'm the lead engineer for Mac at Cisco.
My name is Lila Blum, and I'm the Zero Trust Application and Adoption Lead. Today, we're going to share with you some details of Cisco's enterprise implementation of Zero Trust and how we used Jamf Pro in our rollout. Zero Trust is a security framework built around the concepts of never trust implicitly, always verify, and assuming breach both from inside and outside the network. Zero Trust is a newer concept in the security industry, and companies are interpreting and implementing it in different ways. Some are leaning heavily into network microsegmentation or even adding more encryption. However, Cisco's Zero Trust for the Workforce program focused on more granular controls both at the user device and at the application. As a leader in the security field, Cisco endeavors to provide innovative security strategies and technologies for our clients. Those strategies are piloted within our organization so we can work out the kinks in the system and drink our own champagne. By that I mean we advise our clients to adopt these strategies and technologies that we produce. So we want to adopt the same technology internally to really understand the benefits and drawbacks, as well as be able to provide best practices to our clients for their own implementations. With the Zero Trust architecture we've deployed at Cisco, we've added more layers to our security defense in-depth methods by moving to a per-app authentication strategy. We've paired these increased security measures with an additional borderless access authentication route for Zero Trust secured applications. By borderless, I mean without VPN. So that in turn allows our workforce to work not only securely, but also more conveniently when they're remote. Let's talk more about the technology we deployed to make this happen. When a user tries to access an application via the Zero Trust authentication flow, the controls we've put in place check the trust level of the user and the device. Yes, I did just say trust. Remember, Zero Trust is not about never trusting any users or devices, but rather never trusting them implicitly. By implementing several layers of controls, we establish explicit trust in only the users and devices we deem secure. We've implemented the following controls to achieve that objective. Passwordless primary authentication by a single sign-on. 2 certificates that attest to the user identity and device management status. That user identity certificate enables the passwordless primary authentication, which has been one of the benefits of our Zero Trust architecture. And we also automatically fall back to typed credentials if for any reason that certificate isn't working correctly. The next control we invoke is the device posture assessment using our application called Duo Device Health. This application verifies several elements of device posture and reports them to a cloud-based policy engine, which then reports the posture status to the authentication prompt, where a healthy report allows the auth flow to continue and an unhealthy report results in a denial of entry. Finally, the user re-verifies their identity using Duo multi-factor authentication. If an authentication request passes all these gates, the user is allowed borderless access to the application. You can imagine how popular borderless access has been since employees started largely working from home.
Thanks for that explanation, Lila. Now I'm going to show you what Zero Trust experience looks like when I search for my profile in our internal search tool. As you watch, take note that my laptop is connected to personal Wi-Fi, VPN is off, and notice that I am not prompted for a username and password because of the user identity certificate. Let's see it in action. First, the user identity certificate is accepted. Next, I approve the MFA challenge off screen. Then the device certificate is accepted by Duo. Finally, Duo Device Health checks the device security posture looking for an up-to-date OS, a system password, running anti-malware, enabled disk encryption, and enabled device firewall. And now I've been granted access to the site without entering user credentials or connecting to VPN.
To better visualize what we're talking about here, take a look at this architectural design. Using management software represented in the leftmost column, we've deployed the certificates and other components we mentioned so far. We'll deep dive into those components in later slides. We've used SCCM and later Microsoft Intune to deploy configurations to the Windows fleet. We use Cisco Meraki Systems Manager to deliver configurations to mobile endpoints. And of course, we use Jamf Pro for our Mac fleet. Then in the next column to the right, you see the off-premise endpoint. meaning it's not connected to the corporate VPN. It's on your home Wi-Fi or at Starbucks or on the airport Wi-Fi. The authentication request is initiated at this off-premise endpoint. When the off-premise endpoint tries to access an on-premise application internal to the corporate firewall, the request first hits the Duo Network Gateway, a reverse proxy hosted in the Cisco Network DMZ. The Duo Network Gateway triggers the Duo Device Health app to check device posture against the controls set in the Duo Policy Cloud, and then forwards that request through the corporate firewall to the application being requested. The application single sign-on policy checks whether a session cookie is present, and if not, then sends the request on to our identity provider to complete primary authentication, either via the passwordless user certificate or via form authentication with credential input. Finally, the request is pushed to the Duo API, which invokes the second factor of authentication. After the MFA challenge is approved, the device can connect to the application. It sounds like a lot of steps, but as you just saw in Jacob's demo, this is all pretty quick. Just a quick glance here, but you can see that the Duo Network Gateway is not used for borderless access to our cloud-hosted applications. Though the Duo Network Gateway invokes the control policies for an on-premise internal application, we instead invoke those policies at the identity provider for all other application infrastructures. I'm going to hand it over to Jacob now to talk more about what we achieved with Jamf Pro specifically.
You've seen what it looks like for a user and how the architecture is designed, but what does it take on the device to achieve the secure Zero Trust experience? We've broken it down into three main pillars of managed components on the devices. First is enforcing security posture using Jamf Pro to configure the following items. Device password. We use Enterprise Connect and the Kerberos SSO extension to synchronize user passwords with Active Directory. This is managed via configuration profile. We also developed a set of services around Enterprise Connect and the Kerberos SSO extension to ensure password policy on managed devices. Cisco Secure Endpoint, formerly Cisco AMP for Endpoints, is our anti-malware solution. Secure Endpoint has its own management cloud, but the installation is enforced with Jamf Pro, which I'll share more details about in the next slide. File vault encryption. Enablement and recovery key escrow are enforced by and to Jamf Pro. We only use personal recovery keys, and we developed a service to watch for machines that have been booted with a recovery key in order to enforce single-use recovery keys. Device firewall enabled. Enablement and settings are enforced via Jamf Pro. We don't set extensive rules, nor do we stop users from setting their own. We just want to ensure it is enabled. Second are the Duo components that are delivered via Jamf Pro. Duo Device Health verifies and attests to device posture during authentication. Duo Trusted Endpoint Keychain houses the Duo Trusted Endpoint Certificate. Duo Certifier assists with identification and reporting of the Duo Trusted Endpoint Certificate in the browsers. Lastly, the User Identity Certificate. This enables passwordless authentication. We'll now take some time to begin looking more closely at some of these components, starting with our deployment of Cisco Secure Endpoint, our anti-malware solution. The Secure Endpoint installer is generated from the Cloud Console as a PKG inside of a disk image. And while it would be easy enough to upload this into Jamf Pro for every version we want to deploy, that is not what we do, as that would be time-consuming and repetitive. Instead, our enforcement script is supplied the installer URL as a script parameter in Jamf Pro, allowing us to use the same script for multiple secure endpoint versions and policies. This same enforcement script checks to make sure not only that Secure Endpoint is installed, but also that its services are running properly. If they are not, it will trigger a reinstallation, ensuring devices stay secure. As with many other security products for macOS, Secure Endpoint needs full disk access, which is provided by a Privacy Preferences Policy control profile via Jamf Pro. We also configure the system extension and content filter that Secure Endpoint use with Jamf Pro configuration profiles, suppressing all approval dialogues, allowing for a silent installation. Next, let's explore the Duo components installed on our managed endpoints by Jamf Pro. Similar to the installation strategy for Cisco Secure Endpoint, we use a scripted install for Duo Device Health. Because Duo publish a static URL that always provides the latest version of their installer, we can use a script to download this installer just in time and then install on the device. This saves packaging maintenance and ensures devices always start with the latest version of the software. The Duo Trusted Endpoint Keychain houses the Duo Trusted Endpoint Certificate and is managed by a script provided by Duo as part of the product. This script runs as part of a policy in Jamf Pro. Since our initial rollout internally, Duo now offers a Jamf API-based integration that removes the need to deploy the certificate. We have the solution in testing internally, and we will be moving to it in the near future. As mentioned previously, Duo Certifier assists with the identification and reporting of the Duo Trusted Endpoint Certificate in the browsers. It is installed by a script functionally identical to how we install Duo Device Health. Now let's look at what makes up the user identity certificate used for passwordless authentication. We use a SCEP configuration profile from Jamf Pro to deliver a certificate to managed devices. The certificate contains the hardware UUID of the device, added via Jamf variable, tying the certificate to the device for validation, the SAM account name of the user, added via Jamf extension attribute variable. This is what ties the certificate to the user, and the identity preference. This tells Safari to use the certificate when the IDP requests one, so the user is not prompted to select one. It wasn't all perfect though. I wanted to touch on some of the device challenges we've run into during this rollout. We use Jamf Pro to deliver the user identity certificate to the user channel. However, if the device is enrolled in the Jamf Pro without an MDM-capable user, Jamf cannot deliver the certificate. Prior to Apple's rollout of user-approved MDM, we could have used Jamf Pro to silently refresh the MDM profile and create an MDM-capable user if one were missing. However, between that change and Big Sur's additional changes around MDM profile refresh, we found the only real solution to this problem was for a device to be re-enrolled into Jamf Pro. As noted in some of the other slides, a device is required to have Cisco Secure Endpoint installed to pass Zero Trust posture checks. Cisco Secure Endpoint relies on system extension and privacy preferences policy control profiles delivered via Jamf Pro to function properly. In turn, those profiles require the MDM on the device to be in a user-approved MDM state. To tackle both issues, our data solution and insights teams have been able to leverage the Jamf API to generate dashboards, while our project management and communications teams use our WebEx platform to specifically communicate remediation instructions to those users for their affected devices. At the beginning of the rollout, roughly 17% of our enterprise fleet was in a fault state with Cisco Secure Endpoint. Using enforcement and awareness campaigns, we have reduced that number to 4%. Meanwhile, we also reduced the number of machines missing an MDM-capable user by 70%.
Let's look at some more statistics to give you a better idea of the scale of what we achieved and how quickly we delivered it. In 4 months, July to November 2020, we delivered and tested a proof of concept of our architecture and the Duo Network Gateway infrastructure in dev, stage, and production lifecycles. We convinced 10 major application teams, including the highest traffic internal platform at Cisco, that Zero Trust was secure and convenient for their end users, and then we onboarded their applications to the architecture. By January of this year, we rolled out the configurations Jacob detailed to 140,000 employees using 170,000 managed devices, and we onboarded another 5 applications. As of this recording, in terms of adoption, we have 94 applications using the Zero Trust architecture, generating 2.6 million device health checks per month. Finally, out of all of those users accessing our applications borderlessly, less than 1% have contacted the help desk for Zero Trust related issues. When you consider the scale of what we achieved and our speed of delivery, Zero Trust on an enterprise scale sounds fanciful, but let's look at what made the program execution successful. First, we had strong support from our executives. Our management were able to tell the story and communicate the potential of Zero Trust for the workforce in a way that made executives want more executed and delivered very quickly. So a lot of potential obstacles were avoided. This is a lesson that a program needs servant leader managers dedicated to crushing roadblocks and selling the story to leadership in order to be successful. Because of the timelines leaders asked us to meet, the Zero Trust program team had to set very specific priorities and deliver on those, even if the implementation wasn't perfect. So for some components of our delivery, we had to give a minimum viable product and then iterate towards perfection in additional sprints. The lesson here is perfection is nice, but execution is a must. We did multiple rounds of analysis at different phases to determine which applications to onboard to Zero Trust as strategic priorities. We had VPN logs and IDP logs to determine the highest traffic applications and go for a breadth approach. But we also asked multiple business groups for their help getting us data to enact a vertical or persona-based strategy in which we could enable every application one set of people tends to use on most days. Both strategies have their benefits and drawbacks, but if we had been able to use a more automated technical strategy using whatever DNS crawlers are out there, we could have had even faster success with onboarding and adoption. The lesson here is to find and execute a strategy that works best for your organization. On fleet health, it's a common problem at large organizations that devices aren't always in perfect health, and enforcing device posture sometimes relies on governing user behavior. That's not the case anymore with Zero Trust. You either have a secure device or you don't get access. Of course, during the general access rollout, that meant that we had a few unhappy people who had previously made some one-off changes to their devices. We learned from this issue that next time we'd do well to look at the device requirements ahead of time and start acting on them in conjunction with the endpoint groups very early on, instead of waiting until people are blocked from accessing some applications or features. Changing circumstances during our execution also created some difficulty. In a large organization, you often deal with things like changing policies, org restructuring, and competing priorities on cross-functional teams. So in order to deliver on our commitment, we had to be flexible enough that we could change our expectations, change our strategies, and still deliver. The message here is flexibility.
The landscape of employee access requirements has and will continue to change, requiring us as organizations to keep up. While we want to deliver convenient access to employees, we must manage the accompanying risk. With Zero Trust, you can achieve both competing objectives. Zero Trust is the secure solution to the ever-changing landscape of remote work. Thank you.